You. Okay, hi, I'm Dr. Sharon Saline, and this is...
My name is Seth Perler.
And together we're going to talk about stressed out and overwhelmed, how to manage family life during the COVID-19 crisis, and keep your sanity and bring in some joy. So welcome, it's great to have you. Seth and I are going to talk for about 25 minutes or so on some themes that can help guide you through this next period of time, and then we're going to answer your questions. We really want to spend time talking to you about what's going on with you so that we can form a community and share ideas, and you'll feel supported. You're not alone in what you're dealing with. In fact, we're all dealing with this together. So let's get started. There are 4 themes that Seth and I discussed before we started tonight. And the first theme that we wanted to talk about that would really help families continue to get through this time is to stay connected. Seth, maybe you could share a little bit about what stay connected means to you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, that's super important. We live in a very disconnected time. And what comes to mind for me, so my name's Seth Perler. I'm an executive function coach based in Colorado, and I specialize in working with struggling students in particular, middle, high school, and college, but I also do work with younger kids, but a lot of times younger kids, parents don't see the red flags early enough. So ADHD and executive function go hand in hand. But kids who struggle with this stuff. So when I'm working with families, and the students that I work with, I talk a lot about when we're talking about connection. I talk a lot about the nervous system, and I find that this is a really important topic when working with families and students to help them learn a few things about the nervous system and what's going on. So in terms of connection, I love what's called attachment theory. So that's something you can Google if you're someone who's taking notes right now, or jot down attachment theory and look it up sometime. And attachment theory has to do with how we connect and how parents, couples are connecting with each other. A lot of the literature you're going to find is for couples, but really it doesn't matter. We are all we all either have secure or insecure attachment. So if you can think about somebody who is your best friend, somebody who you're really close to, you know they got your back, you feel heard by them, you feel seen by them, they really understand you, they get you, that type of a person, someone who's very close in your life, you have a secure attachment with that person. And then if you can think about somebody, it could be a coworker, it could be a spouse, it could be a friend or an ex-friend, it could be a relative, a parent. You think about someone you have an insecure attachment with, somebody who you don't feel heard by them. You don't feel seen by them. You don't feel like they know you. They don't get you. They don't take the time. So we can either have secure or insecure. And then within insecure, there are 2 main types, but you can look that up on your own. But either way, with our children and with me as a coach and with Dr. Sharon as well, what we are trying to do with our clients, and obviously in our personal lives as well, is we are trying to have the most healthy and secure attachment with our people as possible. Because when I can work with a student, all students I work with, 100% of the students I work with are resistant. I don't feel like it. This is stupid. Why do I have to do this? I don't want to. I hate school. My teachers hate me. I don't need planners. I don't need calendars. I don't need to look at my portal. I don't need to deal with my email. I don't need to advocate for myself. I don't need to do my homework. I'll do it in 5 minutes. I'll do it tomorrow. I don't want to do it at all. I work with kids who are resistant. So how am I going to get a human being who's resistant to doing what they need to do for their own well-being, for their own education? How am I going to get them to do that? It starts with connection. So I guess what Sharon's asking in terms of connection, what I want you all to imagine is how can you back up and ask, where's the security? Does your child feel heard? Does your child feel seen, understood, known? And what can you do to help your child feel more seen and understood and heard? And
Absolutely. If I want to jump in for a second, we want to
please.
meet kids where they are. Having a connection with your child, a positive connection, is more important now than ever. And the way that you're going to have a positive connection is by having some compassion for yourself and your kids, because your kids are doing the best they can at a very difficult time with limited resources and with a still developing brain, and you're struggling too. And so what we want to try to avoid is perfectionism. Perfectionism can get in the way of that secure attachment. Perfectionism brings judgment and criticism. Right now, we need to do that step back that Seth talked about, zoom out and really decide what's most important here.
Yeah, and what's not necessarily most important is what seems most important, which is doing all the schoolwork. And that may not be the most important thing right now. The most important thing is your relationship with your kid. And you may have healing to do. A lot of families do. There's no shame in that. We've all, I guarantee you, Dr. Sharon has dysfunction. I have dysfunction. We all have it. There's no shame in it. But what do we
Absolutely.
do with that? How do we connect? And what Sharon was saying, what that reminds me of is we are also, with the perfectionism, our kids feel that. How do they feel that? Well, it's because our nervous systems are always talking to each other. Yes, we use words, but our nervous systems are even louder. We really hear our body language. And if our kid hears our anxiety, and we don't have to be perfect, this can be messy. I want to make that real clear today. This is messy stuff. There's nothing wrong with that. But when our nervous system is telling them perfectionism or you're doing this wrong or whatever, they feel pressure in their nervous system. They feel pressure and there's resistance to that pressure. So they're going to look for anything and everything to get away from you or to stop that pressure. They may use lying, they may use excuses, they may use anger, they may use withdrawal, whatever it is, they're just trying to protect the nervous system. So what I want you to do is look at their body language, their nervous systems. Look at Dr. Sharon's right now. She looks relaxed. She looks calm. She has a gentle smile on her face. I can tell she's in a pretty regulated state. If she had that same smile, but her shoulders started going like this, I would know she's chest breathing, and I would know to say to her, hey, I noticed your shoulders are moving. You look a little tense. I'm not going to tell her, calm down or breathe this way. I'm going to reflect what I see. So I'm telling you this too, jot this in your notes. Reflect what you see. Just, hey, I noticed blah, blah, blah. And we don't do that very often in this culture in the United States, or maybe people from other places, but we're not really in touch with that. So it's a practice. Start reflecting. Hey, I notice your nervous system is doing this. Not in those words, but you know
But
what I
I
mean.
think actually I notice or I see is a great way to start a conversation with a child rather than your blah, 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 because we want to
I
share
notice you're
neutral
doing
observations, and that helps kids feel seen and opens the door for them to feel heard.
yeah.
We also want to help kids identify when they're feeling activated in their bodies. All of us, adults and kids, have signs that we're kind of headed off at what I like to call the roadrunner cliff. You're running, and all of a sudden, like, there's no ground underneath you, right? And so we have some signs. What are the signs that you're getting activated? Do you get a knot in your stomach? Do your shoulders lift up to your ears? Do you feel that your breathing is shorter? Does your voice get louder? Does your heart rate does your heart beat faster, your heart rate go up? And so when we can help kids identify these signs in their bodies, when we ourselves can identify these signs, then we're able to focus on regulating, because
That is,
we have to manage ourselves first. Just like that oxygen mask on a plane. If you've ever flown, the flight attendant tells you to put the mask on yourself first and then on your child. That's because if you're dysregulated, if you're losing it, you're basically throwing kindling on the budding fire that is your child, and it's just going to escalate into a big explosion. We want to manage ourselves first.
and if you're dysregulated, your child is not hearing the words that are coming out of your mouth. You are saying these words, they're saying these words. You have your script. You could probably predict the script. And it's just a ping pong game, but you're not hearing each other. So at that time, like Sharon says, that's time to step back and say, whoa, you need to regulate. And the stronger nervous system wins. So if you have a very grounded parent or adult, or like me with my students. I'm pretty unshakable when it comes to my students. So I'm very grounding for them. So I don't have the same, it's definitely harder for the parents. They know all your buttons. But when they push them, you're getting dysregulated.
Right. And
So
so that's a good
it's an
time.
opportunity.
Exactly. It's an opportunity. Sorry to interrupt you, Seth. It's a great time for you to practice what you need to do to calm down. And so you can't practice what you need to do to calm down in that without knowing what it is in advance of that moment. So you've got to have a little family conversation to say, whoa, when I'm feeling activated, when I'm getting worked up, here are the options that I have to take a time apart as a family or to regather myself. For me, I like to go to the bathroom. I mean, I used to just go to the bathroom and wash my hands, but now I wash my hands so much. I splash a little water on my face. I say something encouraging to myself, like, we've been here before, you can do this. And then, even if there's chaos on the other side of the door, you've pulled yourself together. Try to sit down in a calm moment and make a list of something each person in your family could do. A couple things. For some families I've worked with, the kid one girl I worked with liked to go into her room. She had a high bed, she had a lamp, a flashlight and a book, and she liked to go in under her bed and read until her mom told her to come down. Another kid I know liked to go into his room and listen to music, acid rock on his headphones, super loud. Sometimes people want to get a drink of water. Figure out what those strategies are in advance. This helps you plan for success when you have those inevitable explosions. One of the things that constantly amuses me about families is people are surprised when they yell at each other. Like, oh, I can't believe this is happening again. Expect that it will happen again and plan for it.
Yeah, and I have two more points. So following up on what you just said, finding out that you yelled at each other, it's okay that it's messy. That's okay.
Mhm.
It's what you do with that. And then as far as connection, one thing is pre-conversations and one thing is fun. So the pre-conversation, and this is the last thing I have to say in this segment, but the pre-conversation I use all the time in so many different contexts. But in terms of what's going on right now, pre-conversation means that when you and your child are not dysregulated, when you are in a regulated state, that's when you want to approach your child and say, hey, can we chat for a minute? Look, sometimes I push your buttons, you push mine. I get pretty frustrated and I act out like this. And I really want to heal some things and just have more fun with you and more peace and more joy and connection with you. And what do you want from me at these times? When do you feel heard? When do you not feel heard? Have a pre-conversation when things are good, because otherwise all you're doing is staying in reaction mode. And when we're always reacting rather than responding implies sort of a pause,
Mhm.
the lack of judgment that you were
Mhm.
talking about
Mhm.
before. It's like you have a pause button, and before you're about to react, you go, "Wait a second, is this really how I want to react?"
It's a
So
meeting. Responding is more of a meeting rather than a pushing against.
mhm. And so we want to respond differently. And then the second thing I was going to say was about the fun.
Mm.
And if you want to connect with your child, get it in your calendars every week, pick a time or two or three, whether it's 5 minutes, a half hour, or a good couple hours, where you can connect with your child, have fun, do something you both like together, and get it in the calendar. And do not bring up school. That is not the time for it. And tell them with the pre-conversation, hey, let's have
Yeah.
movie night, and I won't even bring up school once, and if I do, I'll give you $10 or whatever it is. But let them know, let them mentally prepare that, oh, good, I'm glad we're not gonna, they may not believe you at first, but prep them, hey, we're not gonna talk about school. So have fun, enjoy your child a
Right.
lot. This is
Right.
what it's about. You got 18 summers before they move out, theoretically.
And
Enjoy.
and and I think also we might want to gamify some things. You have to do the dishes, have them put their music on, learn the words to a few of their songs, dance around so they can roll their eyes and be like, "Oh my God." You're like, "Yes, aren't I awesome? I'm embarrassing you. This is great." You want to have some fun. Sit in their room when they have to fold their laundry. And again, put some music on, sing, tell stories, Gamify things. See how fast you can pick up things from the floor, who can do it, who can pick up the most things in 20 seconds. So we want to try to shift from have to have tos with some joy, or just plain want tos. I'm just going to hang out. We're going to play whatever game you want. So we've talked a little bit about managing ourselves first, increasing family connectivity that's positive, because here's the thing, negative connection is also very strong. When you're arguing with your child, you're connected, but not in a way that feeds either of you. You know, it's a heart closing, not a heart
Mm.
opening, right? So we want to stay connected, manage ourselves first, be accountable. If you're having a bad day and you lose it, that's okay. Tell them you're sorry. You know what I like to institute with families I work with is what I call take back of the day. Everybody gets one. You say something and it could be your take back. And that helps kids, particularly kids with ADHD who may impulsively say or do something they wish they hadn't, come to some awareness and own it and pull it back. And it can help you if you sort of lose your temper at 1 minute that you're at the end of your rope, and you can say, whoa, that was my take back. I shouldn't have said that. That was not okay. It increases accountability, and it levels the emotional playing field a little bit, which is what we need. We need to see each other each as humans.
And
You
it
know,
models good tools for
it
them too.
models good tools. You're still the parent. You still have all of the parental authority and responsibility, but it shows them that you're a real person too. So we also talked a little bit about play periods. Seth gave
Is
great
this
some great.
theme 2 or?
We're on theme 4 at this
Okay,
point.
it's 6:19. So people were trying.
We're
Sharon and
throwing
I
it
are
at
both
you
very
fast.
verbose.
Right. So we talked a little bit about reducing family reactivity. And these themes are actually on the description on my website. I'll give you a link to that later so you can go back and see what these various topics are. But you're going to model alternative behaviors for your kids. And as Seth said, you're going to improve how everybody interacts with each other. And use those I statements that Seth suggested. I notice, I see. One thing I want
Can
to
I
talk over.
clarify that one because it's
Yes,
super important?
please. Yes,
So when we
please.
said pushing buttons, I noticed that I didn't say something how I wanted to. I said, you're pushing my buttons, I'm pushing your buttons. In an I statement, I would say, wow, I feel like I just had a button pushed. I feel angry. I feel
Mm,
frustrated. You just said blah, 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 and I feel sad about that. I'm taking the responsibility for my feelings rather than you made me feel. That gives somebody a lot of power.
mhm,
That gives over us. People
mhm.
don't make us feel things. We have our choices in how we respond. Enough said.
Well, one thing I also wanted to say is that I'm noticing in some of the comments, and I think this is relevant, so I'm going to bring it in. Jennifer says, trying to figure out how to implement these suggestions while we are in pandemic mode. Any specific suggestions for how to implement these ideas when our schedules are so nutty, family is sick, economic stress, etc.? Seth, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, it goes back to the messy to me. Like, this is a mess.
Yeah.
We are in a worldwide pandemic. This is something we will remember the rest of our lives. Our kids will grow up and they'll tell their kids, oh, yeah, when I was a kid, I went through blah, blah, blah. Like, it's okay that it's messy. You take every little step you can. What I always say to my clients and my families is baby steps are everything. Journey of a
Mm-hmm.
1,000 miles begins with one step. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Micro successes, baby steps. You do not have to solve all the problems, all of these things right now. Now, as far as schedules, we'll probably get to this later, but I will say it right now so I don't have to say it later. You want it visual and colorful and big and clear. And I made a video recently on that on my site, sethperler.com, which we'll link to later. But you do want to think through those things. You want buy-in. But yeah, I have a million ideas for this. But for your question, like what specific suggestions how to implement them when everything is so chaotic, it's not going to look pretty. You just take the steps you can. There's no first step, second step, third step. This prioritizes over this. Each family is different. I would say a visual schedule is a very high priority. Pre-conversations about what's coming up in the coming weeks in the country, in the world, in the family, the unknown. pre-conversations about, hey, let's just talk. Like those things. I mean, you're right now, you have all of these details to worry about, but again, the most important thing is the relationship. So every time you get lost in, our schedules are nutty, the family's sick, economic stress, and all these things, come back to, let's connect. You're going to bed, you've had a big blowout with your kid, you guys are resentful of each other for the last 2 hours. Go up to them and say, hey, I love you, I care about you, I would go to the moon for you, I'm here for you, I am not perfect, but I am doing the best I know how to do. Can I have a hug?
Mhm.
Or whatever the dialogue is.
Can I give you a hug?
Yeah. So
So Seth, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about schedules. So I noticed that what really works best are simple schedules. Too many complications really can overwhelm kids. Many kids I'm working with do better with a work period. Sometimes what we're doing in that work period has to be detailed at the beginning. Sometimes kids want to choose for themselves. Help us figure out a little bit about how to plan for work time successfully.
okay, so I just did a massive video on this at the top of my pandemic hub on my site that talks in detail about it, where I really thought through. But the gist is, one, it has to be visual. Two, what you said about simple is really important, because a lot of very detail oriented parents will make a very detailed, like size 10 font
Yeah.
schedule. That is not good for a kid who has executive function or struggles or ADHD. So simple, clean, less is more. Less is more. Look, your kids are used to go, if they're middle school and high school, they're used to going to about 7 classes a day.
Mhm.
It's really, in my opinion, as an educator, it's too much anyway. So less is more. And what Dr. Sharon said about having blocked out times, I'm big on that too. Like, to think that your child is going to do like 10 minutes of math a day, I would rather them do 30 minutes of math on Monday and Thursday than 10 minutes each day, unless they are detail oriented kids. And if you're watching this, your kid is not that kid. So I would rather them immerse, take their
Mhm.
time, chill
Mhm.
out, relax, have a snack, sit down with their stuff and immerse in it. And I know that a lot of you watching are going, I can't even get them to the table. Okay. Anyhow, I know it's challenging. Don't deny that. Number
Mhm.
two, you have to have buy-in and ownership. So when you're
Mhm.
creating the schedule, and I know that some of you right now are thinking, yeah, well, my kid's not bought into the schedule. Yeah, well, my kid doesn't take ownership. Yes, it's hard. But the more that you can get your child to have some buy-in, and you say, hey, when it's a pre-conversation and everybody's regulated, hey, can we sit down? Let's make a schedule. Let's make a schedule for this week. What do you want it to look like realistically? And you're allowed to say, yeah, well, that's not really realistic, but hold off, stay back, just see what they say. Start off with their ideas first, make it their way first. And then you can say, well, can I? So, what I do as a coach is I try to get a little bit of buy in, and then I always try to get a tiny bit more. So, I'll say, cool, cool, cool. Can we add 5 or 10 more minutes to that? I'll do false choices a lot. Please write down false choices, where I'll say, can we do 5 or 10 minutes? Or do you want to do 5, 10, or 15 minutes more? I mean,
Mhm.
I could say anything, but I just made up 3 things. And I know even if they said 5, it's a win, because it's pushing them a tiny bit past their comfort zone. And
Mhm.
that's a win. A lot of it is the mental game, anyhow. So I guess that's my biggest things with schedules: visual, buy-in and ownership, and whatever else I said. Sharon and I are both pretty tired. So
One thing that I've noticed there, when I think about buy-in for these kids, there are two categories that I notice seem to be most important. The first one is conflict. So that goes back to connection. Your kids don't really want to argue with you 24/7. They don't wake up in the morning and think, ugh, how am I going to ruin mom or dad's day? Let's see what I can do to really ruffle everybody's feathers and make everyone unhappy. That's not how they wake up, right? And that's not how you wake up. So you want to use their desire for people to get along, for you to get off their back, not to be nagged, as an impetus to participate in the schedule that you're creating. ask them what their ideas are about a schedule. I worked with someone recently, and she knows she didn't really want to do a schedule, but she also was tired of being nagged. So we came up with a schedule that worked for her, which is she had a work period, but no one could tell her what to do in that work period. She would just have to show what she accomplished after 30 minutes. And that was okay with her mom, who said, okay, as long as I can see that you've done something, I don't need to know what exactly it is in advance. She didn't want to have that the same thing every day. She wanted to be able to choose. And I call that directed free choice, kind of like what Seth was saying, the false choice. You're giving kids a choice, but it's a choice of something they have to do. It's not, yes, I'm going to do this, or no, I'm not. The thing that can motivate kids for buy-in is screen time. And I want to talk about this with you, Seth, because I feel like this is such a huge issue. What I see in families is that they give away screen time, and then they take it away as a punishment for when kids don't do things they're supposed to do. And this doesn't work, because punishments don't teach skills. What we want to do is
Say that again, please.
Punishments don't teach skills. And for kids with ADHD or learning disabilities or who are on the spectrum, it's all about learning skills, the skills of independence. And we want to use that as motivation for kids. They want you to get off their back. They want to have freedom. Great, we want that too. Here's what we're going to do so you can show me that you can earn it. One of my clients wants an extra half hour of Discord twice a week. So his parents said, okay, this is what you have to do in this next week to show us that you can earn it. You're going to set an alarm, and you're going to get off your computer at 9:45 the way you're supposed to. We will give you one reminder. If you push back and you argue, then you won't get the star or whatever for that day. And in a week, you have to get 5, because no one could do something every day. And so he's like, okay, cool. Does that mean that if I do it for a week, then I can try having Discord, an extra half hour of Discord the following week? And his parents said yes. So we need to negotiate with the currency that matters to your kids. So what I would suggest, and I'm going to stop talking, is if it's okay with you for your kids to have 3 hours of free will and screen time every day, give them an hour, and then have them earn the next 2 hours, the bonus time, through their cooperation of those have-tos that you want them to do. Motivate them to get that extra time. Seth, what do you think?
Well, this is one of the most difficult topics that I address, and I don't address it well because I don't have great answers for it. I'm working with middle, high school, and college kids all the time, and the middle and high school families, getting the students to have buy-in for limits. A lot of the families already are so far down the rabbit hole of their child being up till 3 o'clock in the morning on electronics, or figuring out how to bypass any of the security measures, or all these things that we wouldn't even be able to figure out how to do. This is a really challenging one. But along the same lines that Dr. Sharon was speaking, but in a little bit different languaging, to me, it comes down to the buy-in and ownership again. If you try to use it as a reward or a punishment, and you're just sort of this external top-down force that's trying to impose your will upon them, you may have results in the moment, or after a blow up or whatever, but it's not change. There's no buy-in. So I'm starting back up. It goes back to the relationship, healthy and secure attachment. You may have repair to do in the family. You may not. Every family is in a different place. But I think parents sometimes don't understand how long repair takes sometimes. It can take weeks, months, or years. Think about your parents. I guarantee you can add in the comments if you want, but that there are some of you watching right now who your parents, you still have unresolved stuff with, and you get to a point where you're like, wow, my parents will always be that way. I just have to accept them how they are, yada, yada. So, but it starts with your child with connection, secure and healthy attachment, them feeling heard, them feeling like they have some buy-in and some ownership around this stuff. But I really like what Dr. Sharon was saying, because the way that she presented it to you, and if you can rewatch that part, it was brilliant because, and she's done this a lot, but I could hear how, and we don't know each other very well, but I could hear how she was presenting the dialogue, how she's covering every base. She's anticipating the problems. And that's where I talk about the pre-conversation. Like when I talk to parents, parents will say, yeah, but if I do that, my kid will do this. And I'm like, well, that's really good that you know that.
Yeah.
Now let's step back and figure out how to proactively deal with that. How can you say to your kid, look, you're probably going to want to say this when I say this, but I don't want that response. I want to feel really heard by you, and I want to hear you. So that's a gift that you know how the script is going to go, people. That's a gift. But what are you going to do with that gift? You do have to strategize, parents. This is messy. You need to sit down with your spouse, if you have a spouse, with quiet, sit at the kitchen table, no distractions, and really strategize. Like in this conversation that I'm having with Dr. Sharon right now, I can't give like specifics to everybody, but I will say for everybody, and this is why what Dr. Sharon and I do works with families, is we spend a lot of time helping them granularly strategize things.
Right.
This
Right.
isn't just have a little pre-conversation, read a script. You really
Right.
need to think, what's my kid going to say? How would I respond? What's the best way to do that? Be creative, trust your gut.
One of the things that I think, well, I'm reading some of the questions here, and one of the things that I want to sort of make a plug for is what I call family work time. And Seth and I have discussed this. Make a specific place where you and your child or your children are going to work during the course of the day. Even if kids are on different computers with their headphones participating in classes, they can be within areas where you can witness them. Have family work time where everyone is at the table doing something they need to do, their homework or participating in a class. This way, you can actually do some of your work at the same time, and your kids will get a cue from you and how you're modeling. Remember, most kids get cues from other kids on how to behave in a classroom, and they don't have that right now. So you can help your kids stay on track by establishing a family work time. You can also watch them to see if they're actually doing work. One of my clients has his child sit in the same chair at the kitchen table because when the screen's open, it reflects in the window behind him, and my client can see what his son is doing. So use the desire to surf the internet or do something fun as a bonus, as an incentive to do a piece of schoolwork. So I'd like to sort of turn to your questions. And the first question that came up that I want to address is, what happens when you and your partner or your ex-partner don't agree on parenting right now? Seth, do you have any ideas about that?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind, again, it's an opportunity.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is one of the things that I say over and over and over and over and over is that we as the adults need to do our own deep inner work. And what I mean by our own deep inner work is it's very scary for anyone to really look inside. I know for me, when I first started going down the path of introspection, I was afraid that I was going to find out that the truth about myself is what my biggest fear was, which was that I was a worthless piece of shit. Excuse my language. But that was my own self talk and dialogue. And I started going down the rabbit hole of doing my own deep inner work. Therapy, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever, self-development books, friends, support groups, spirituality, whatever you do for your own self-development, journaling, to get the truth about things. It's an opportunity that you don't agree on things. And how it's an opportunity is you get to really work on yourself. And again, this is no quick fix. This is over weeks and months. You get to do your own journaling and look at you and say this one question. If you're a note taker, the main overarching question to me is, what's my truth? What's my truth?
Mhm.
What's my truth?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you can journal on that for so many different things. And when you're finding your truth and you and your spouse disagree and you're at peace with your truth, you can look at them and say, okay. And what Dr. Sharon was saying before about judgment and criticism, and the opposite would be more objective, is you can have peace of mind and peace of heart and say, okay, that's an interesting perception. I don't see it that way. And then you can look at your kiddo and say, look, here's the way I see it. it diffuses the conflict because you're at peace with, yeah, you see things differently and you're not trying to change them anymore. And then the irony is, and I've seen this in my own family, is that um, once we start modeling that self-care, the introspection, the peace of mind, and we're really working on some of these things, that modeling is extraordinarily powerful to your child and your spouse or partner or whatever. People see the change in you. And also, the last thing I'll say about that is that if your buttons are being pushed all the time, and talking about self-responsibility, if my buttons are being pushed all the time, it's because I have the buttons. I own them. They're mine. So my job is to get rid of the buttons, not to get you to stop pushing my buttons. So
Mm-hmm.
that puts a different frame on it. Then I can say,
Mm-hmm.
wow, what are my buttons? What's this about? And oftentimes it goes back to other times in our life when we've had experiences and we've learned and habituated patterns to deal with the experiences. Sometimes they're great. Sometimes they're dysfunctional or maladaptive or not working, not getting us what we think we want.
Right. One of the hardest things when you're parenting, whether you're parenting, we're together as a couple, or if you're divorced or separated, is prioritizing what's most important. And what's most important here is your child's well-being. The best measure of a child's well-being after divorce is how their parents can get along. This is not a time to pull out the power card and be or the I need to be right card. The card that you need to pull is the cooperation card. How can you cooperate and collaborate in the best interest of your child so that they can move through the rest of the school year as effectively as possible? So we've had a lot of questions. I want to move on from middle school parents, parents of middle schoolers. Some samples of questions are, we are literally fighting with our 13-year-old son to get him to go to his room so we can hear you. How do I keep my middle schooler on task so it doesn't take all day to finish work that should only take a few hours? How do I deal with my son needing breaks, but I'm not sure how long? He only can work for short periods of time. Seth, do you have any tips for parents of middle schoolers who are, where time management is an issue? These kids don't really have the executive functioning skills to teach themselves, to manage this learning. I've seen that middle schoolers are really struggling the most, much more than high schoolers in a lot of cases. So what kinds of advice would you have for parents of middle schoolers who either won't do their work or are having a lot of temper tantrums and resistance to working together with their parents?
This is what my work is all about. And this is it. I'm so sorry to everyone listening because I feel like we are scratching the surface of the surface here. And it's really hard to give you concrete stuff on this. But again, the journey that you're on, unfortunately, is way longer than you hope it will be. Your child has been working very hard on developing tools for resistance, for inaction, on learning how to push your buttons, on learning how to avoid doing it. You know, from an outsider's perspective, oh, if my child would just focus for 20 minutes, it'd be done. Their life would be so much easier. Yes, that is rational. That is logical. That makes sense. And what you do is you try to convince your child with lectures and then with punishments and rewards or whatever your tools are to get them to see the light. Yet your child is not feeling heard. And I'm generalizing, but these are patterns I've seen so many times over and over and over. It's crazy. So again, it backs up to the relationship and the secure attachment. And there's a lot of healing and repair a lot of times that needs to be done before we can really get there. One thing that I talk about in terms of, first of all, the co-working that Dr. Sharon said is I do with my students all the time. I have students online right now. We will meet online and we will co-work. Um, so basically, we'll start off a session. I'll say, all right, what's your focus? And they'll tell me, and I'll tell them my focus, and then we'll check in periodically. Now, I am very attuned, so I know what is going on. So I know you want to be careful as a parent, though, when you're going to ask questions and how you're going to ask them, and always be watching the nervous system. And you can start with a brief conversation, meaning instead of saying, "Hey, are you done with that math yet? What's going on?" Say, "Hey, can I interrupt you real quick? All right, I'm going to ask you about math, okay? All right, how's the math going?" So you have to back up so much, and parents are like, "But I know they just need to get." Sorry, but if you want this to work, it's way slower than you think.
Mhm.
And the baby steps are everything. That is what's going to get you big wins, is tiny, tiny wins, and acknowledging them for it, seeing them, everything you see them do right. Literally, if your child like sits down and writes their name on the paper, you'd be like, "Hey, you just wrote your name on the paper. Awesome." And then look away. I call them pebbles of positivity. But
Mm.
that is one of my keys to success. I am noticing my kids all the time. Every little thing they do,
Mhm.
I'm like, "Hey, that was great. Hey, that was awesome." And I'm just throwing them, not waiting for a response. Okay. I want it to soak in like a sponge in a bucket of water. I just want to leave it and let the residue do its work. But the
I
positivity and the 3-to-1 rule, and I will say this, I teach parents the 3-to-1 rule. You want to do
Mhm.
3
3
positives to every
positives
one
for every
perceived
negative.
negative.
Right.
And parents, a lot of you, if you get to 1-to-1, that's an improvement. Okay. It doesn't matter if it's 3 or 2 or 1, but these kids hear a lot of negative. "Hey, I got an 89. Why didn't you get a 90?
Mhm.
How does that make
Right.
a kid feel? Hey, I just cleaned my room. Oh, great. Why are those socks still on the floor?" Like, they
Yeah.
feel like nobody notices. They need a lot of it. That is, if you take anything from this talk, that's one of the most winning strategies. And who was it? Mary Lou, I think it was, has been asking. Yeah, you've been saying a lot of amazing comments here.
Mhm.
But I feel your struggle because I have a lot of parents like you. And you're absolutely right about the things that you're asking about. This is hard. It's challenging. It takes a long time. This is complex. This is not these are not easy issues. Be patient with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself, and put the relationship first above everything. And the last thing I'll say is, with a middle school question you asked, there's a book called The Self-Driven Child, The Self-Driven Child, The Self-Driven Child. You may want to check out. And it conveys the idea really well, but how, you know what, sometimes you can let them fail. You want them to know that it's theirs, that they own it. And a lot of times they can turn around and blame us, depending on the dynamic, but sometimes that's the best thing for them.
Mm.
And I'm
Well, we
not
do
saying
learn. We
this
do.
isn't, not a blanket statement. There's a time and a place, but sometimes if they can learn more from that sometimes than you pushing them, and they finally get a C, and the relationship is really corroded and they resent school more. So really pick your battles carefully, strategically.
Absolutely. I mean, I talk about this in my 5 C's, and celebration is the last C, which is
I
we
love your
want.
structures. You have really
Yeah.
good structures on
Thank
things.
you. So we want, when I would talk about consistency, what we want to look at is consistent efforting, not necessarily the outcome, but is your child putting their name on their paper? Way to go. We want kids, these kids need encouragement and they need to be noticed positively for the efforts that they're making so they'll make more, right? If it's all about the outcome, they're not ever going to be able to sustain themselves till then. So there are some specific questions. Someone asks, how can you convince a child to work with a coach when they're resistant? Remember that your child actually wants to do well. It's better to do well than not do well. And if they're not interested in doing well, it's because they feel a certain amount of defeat. They think that the mountain is so big, no matter what they do, they're never going to be able to climb it. So, which is why what Seth's talking about is so important. We have to break things down and make them smaller. One of the benefits of having a coach is that you won't be necessarily coaching them on school. So that we want to entice them with what matters to them. Jessica says that she has an
Can I
IE.
interrupt you there?
Yes, please.
So, and I noticed in that question, how do you convince? That
Yep.
goes back to what I was saying before, where we're often trying to convince or rationalize or logic or preach or make them see the light. So you may not convince them. That's not your job. That's the job of the coach. Your job is just what Sharon said. Their nervous system is overwhelmed. Your job is to take that overwhelm and shrink it. Your job is to say, look, sit down with the coach for 5 minutes. I swear on $1,000 that if you want to leave after 5 minutes, we're out of there.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make the win attainable. Okay, fine. Now listen to the person for 5 minutes. Cool. It has to feel manageable. There are so many great questions, but it's so much of it is the mental game is we're like, okay, your kid did their homework. You look at it and you see a bunch of problems on it, and you're like, you need to fix every single thing.
No,
Why?
no.
Why do they need to fix every single thing?
Don't do that.
Like,
Let them turn the homework in as it is. Let them own their own homework. Seth and I agree. I'm sorry I had to interrupt. Just don't correct their homework.
Now, there's a time and a place and a lot of nuance. I wouldn't just say that.
Right. But in general, if your kid does
depends on the
their homework.
age.
Right, of course. But, what we're talking about failing is we want to try to avoid the failure mentality, which is why bother trying if I'm going to fail anyway? You actually, and your kids,
And
you
that's how
don't
they
know.
feel so often.
Right. But we don't know the outcome of their efforts. We don't know that. And they feel that they're going to fail because the task is so big. They no longer have any sense of authority over actually accomplishing the task. So we need to break things down into something that they can actually do and say, wow, look, I accomplished something. I'm on my way. Okay? And most kids don't want to fail. They're just bored. They're frustrated. They don't like online learning. For many kids with ADHD, online learning is antithetical to how they operate. And so we have to keep that in mind when we're asking them to sit at a computer and teach themselves something. Seth, do
Yeah.
you want to answer another question?
I see this pattern a lot with my students where they're not doing it to engage in learning. They're just doing it to get it done, get you off the back, or get their teacher off the back. And that's the sad state of things. And I do want to mention that these questions are awesome. And I will say that there are very large systemic problems that have been going on for years in these kids' lives to the place where they're at, where they're so disengaged with some of their classes right now. So this is the struggle is real. You guys are asking great questions. They're totally valid. There was one that said, I do want to address this. Do you let kids with ASD fail as much? They tend to be perfectionists and stop trying. I could not say a blanket statement about that. There's a time and a place. So it it's not about how much, or obviously you have to think it through. You know what, I will say this, for whatever Sharon and I say, or the teachers say, you have to listen to your gut. Your gut knows.
Mm-hmm.
Your gut knows. Although we are in a culture where we are so distracted, and our culture is there's so much static that it's often hard to hear our gut. Our head screams, blah, 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 story, narrative, narrative. But that quiet voice in the gut and the heart knows. So no, I wouldn't say do you necessarily let them fail as much. I mean, they may not be being supported the same way, that you may need to advocate more for them. And so anyhow, it's very different for every kid. Should we show them our sites right now? We got
Let's show the site. Seth, why don't you we're going to keep going, of course, but Seth, why don't you share your screen and let people know how they can get in touch with you and stay in touch with you. Seth has a wealth of resources.
I feel so bad because I feel like we have hours of content to cover and not hours of time. So I'm sorry, because for all of you listening, I feel like I'm speaking so fast. There's just so much to cover. This is my site. It's called SethPerler.com. I'll type it in the thing later. But if you look up Seth Perler or Seth Perler Executive Function, no matter how you spell it, it'll find me. Right here, I have a free toolkit, and I send out a blog every single Sunday. So I have so much content in here. And then this is my pandemic hub, and I do a lot of YouTube videos. I made for parents right here, just all kinds of content related to this stuff for the pandemic, and just where I can really dive deeper into some of the stuff. So go ahead, if you want to support me, sign up, subscribe on YouTube, do all the things, yada yada. I work very hard to create awesome stuff for families.
And he does. And I will just share my screen also. I had it. I don't know where it is. Here it is. Oh, sorry. Let me see if I can share that. 1
Thank you,
second.
Christy.
Um, and so this is my website, and I have lots of resources on it as well. There are books, videos, lots of articles. I write a regular blog to help parents. I also want to share with you something really exciting. So I created an ADHD solution card deck, and it's been released recently. You can get it on Amazon or through pesi.com. And this
Beautiful.
is called the ADHD solution deck, and it's 50 strategies to help kids learn, reduce stress, and improve family connections, based on the 5 C's of ADHD, ADHD parenting from my book. And there are cards for each suit. So there's a bunch of ideas for celebration, compassion, consistency, collaboration, and self-control. And you can work your way through the deck, in some sort of chronology, or you can just pick a card. If you're having a bad day, you're like, I need a self-control tip. Here, let me grab one. So I would encourage you to check these out as well. So let's go back to a couple more of the questions. Somebody talked about how, let's see, what do I have here? Let's see. Oh, what are the options for remote learning for ADHD? And someone also said they had an IEP coming and their child was 2E and won't get services.
How
So
are you doing on time?
we have 6 minutes left.
Okay, I
So
can stay longer. I have nothing after this.
I can stay a little longer too. So let's look at, there's a couple people who've said that their kids are become explosively dysregulated, particularly at bedtime, and they just shut down. And so let's talk a little bit about what to do when your kid is, just flipped the switch and is out of control. What are some things you can do in that moment? Seth, do you have any suggestions?
I mean, the way I look at it, the thing you need to do when your kid is dysregulated is do something about it when your kid is not dysregulated.
Exactly.
So, and it doesn't mean that the dysregulation is not going to happen, but this is hard work, people. It takes time. If your child is getting explosive in this now, you got to look at, is that just a new thing with what's been going on in the last month or so, and it has really escalated? Because that's more of a trauma around maybe more of a trauma around, and this is legitimate. Probably all of us right now are going through legitimate trauma, and I'm not using that word lightly. By the definition. So we are experiencing trauma, a global trauma too. So, but if it's a pattern that's been going on for a long time, we're not going to give you a quick fix here. That's not how it works. So if your kid is explosive a lot, and this really scares me because I've seen teenagers who get bigger than their parents and are so explosive. And if you're seeing this at a younger age, the worst thing you can do is nothing. And wish it away and hope it away and try to talk it away.
Or give into it. Like, we're not going to trigger you, so I'm not actually going to do things that I think might trigger you. I'm just going to avoid. And then what happens is parents give their kids too much power in the family system.
Yeah. So so your child is dysregulated. Your child's nervous system is overwhelmed. That means that they have a story, a narrative in their mind, whether it's late at night or whether it's in the middle of the day or whether it's because of a test. But if they're getting explosive, okay, they have a story and you have to rule out other mental health issues and figure out what's going on. So get help. There's nothing wrong with that. In my family growing up, it was not okay to get help. It was shameful to get help. It meant that you were broken. That is bullshit, okay? Strong people get help in every domain you can possibly imagine. So ask for help. Whether it's books, whether it's journaling, whether it's therapists, whether it's free, whether it's paid, It doesn't matter. People have spent their lives working on this stuff. An explosive child, and there's a great book, I think, called The
The
Explosive Child,
Explosive Child by Dr. Ross Green.
but
Yes,
your
it's very
child's
helpful.
nervous system is overwhelmed, and your child's narrative and story is telling them that they are unsafe and they are being threatened. So even though you and your child are talking or yelling or whatever, the mind believes that it's unsafe. And that's going to signal their amygdala, part of the nervous system, and it's going to say, hey, amygdala, we are being attacked, or we may be attacked.
Mm,
So, and then that sends a message to the adrenals on top of the kidneys, and it shoots adrenaline to the heart, and then adrenaline goes to the muscular system so that your child can fight, flight, freeze, faint, whatever, so that your child's nervous system can get into a protective state. When that is happening, no communication is going on. You aren't hearing each other. But if that's happening a lot, then there's a lot of work that has to be done. Now, I've seen tons of kids, and I'm sure Dr. Sharon has too, who have turned it around, who have gotten resources within themselves, who have learned about emotional regulation, who have had enough self-reflection and introspection and guidance and being taught. It's like somebody gave them a toolkit, and then somebody taught them how to use different tools where they could better manage this stuff.
mm,
And I've also seen families where it hasn't been addressed. And as you can imagine, the results of that are disastrous. This is no joke. Addiction, the worst of the worst of the worst, in my opinion, is suicide,
of
hopelessness.
course.
So this is
Right.
no, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic on this call. I don't know you or your kid, but if there is a repeating
Mm,
pattern of explosiveness, it's a lot of work, but you can do this. You can do this. And the
right.
more you model self-regulation, the more you do your deep inner work, and the more you're that stable force for yourself, and you're doing self-care, and you're listening to your heart and your gut and your truth, and you've worked through the more your child is going to see your nervous system. And when they are triggered, they're going to see your nervous system, and they're going to go, their nervous system is going to go, huh, maybe I'm safer than I thought.
Mm,
And over a long period of time, their nervous system is going to,
calm down.
this is not BS. This works.
It does work. And I talk about this both on my website and in my book. I have a method for dealing with this kind of thing called stop, think, act. And exactly what Seth said is you need to sort of in before the event happens in a calm moment, or the day after an event, say, look, this doesn't fly in our family. It's not working for you. It's not working for me. Let's figure out how we can call a stop in the action. What we're going to do to calm our nervous system down. It takes anywhere between 12 and 15 minutes once the amygdala is activated for your system to recalibrate. So what are we going to do during that time? You want to play with the bunny? You want to go under your bed and read a story? You want to build Lego? I want to listen to music? You want to go outside and shoot hoops? Let's have a list of some things. Then we're going to come back together. Think. We're going to talk about what just happened. Why do you think it was so triggering for you, and what would you like to do next? What is the next right thing? How can we move forward? We're not going to process why you did it and what was wrong and all of that. We're just going to ask your child to reflect on their choice. You can reflect on yours and then make a decision about what the next right thing is. Later in the day or the next day when everybody's calmer, then you can go back and talk about it, but not in that moment. So you have to plan for these explosions. So I have two topics that I really want to make sure we get to. It's 9 o'clock, so we're
And
going
then
to
we'll
go.
wrap up after that.
We'll wrap up. One
Cool.
is I just want to say something about anxiety because Seth gave that beautiful description of how the amygdala works. And a lot of kids are very anxious right now. They're overwhelmed. They're anxious about when things are going to go back to normal. What will normal look like? Are they going to have school next year? What are they going to do this summer? What can we do as parents?
Yep.
And counselors to help our kids stay present, or what I like to stay focused on the present and what I call the next present. 1 week at a time is really where we are right now, and that's disconcerting for adults, and it's extra disconcerting for kids. Seth, what do you think about
Well, I
managing
heard two things. I
anxiety?
heard the anxiety, and then I heard something that you kind of alluded to, which is sort of, which I want to address, which is sort of, I hope if somebody can type it in the chat, because my brain is pretty fried, but is how to deal with real education. So let's say your kid is jumping through hoops at school, but you're concerned that your
Mhm.
kid is not really getting a lot out of it now, and months may go on. And you want to still make sure that they're putting pennies in the piggy bank of life by having meaningful educational experiences despite all this. So anxiety in that. Can someone put that in the chat, something like that in the chat, educational, whatever, so that I remember that. Anxiety.
Mhm.
Okay. So I want to give you all permission to, if you need to go and email a teacher or the teachers, all the teachers, whatever, the team, teachers and administrators and the counselor. I want to give you permission to email them if you need to and say, hey, we can't do this. Our family is struggling with this. What's going on with the anxiety around this and all this? What you're asking to do, the mountain that my child has to climb of work to do, we can't do this. Help us here. Work with us. Look, we need to put our kid first and our relationships with our family first. If they don't understand that and you've CC'd it to some counselors and admin, there
Mhm.
is something seriously wrong with those
Mhm.
human beings.
Mhm.
This is a legit, crazy, wacky, serious time going on.
And there's a lot of really boring, busy work that kids are being asked to do. And I talked to someone recently, and there's no online on-screen presence from their teachers. She's a middle schooler of 8th grade. All she has is like
Go to the link and
go
do
to
the
the
thing.
link and assignments, and it's terrible. And you can't. That's not interesting. It's hard to sustain interest. And she, of course, was failing. And so we came up with some agreements because she doesn't want to fail, but it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
So if you need to send a heartfelt email, send it. I want to give
Mm-hmm.
you permission to do that. You do
Mm-hmm.
not have to go through this the way that, these are arbitrary decisions that schools are making to deal with it the best they can. They don't know what's going on in your household. And especially if your child has attentional difficulties and processing difficulties combined, that is a double whammy in terms of, somebody asked earlier about how do I get my kid to get stuff done? It takes them 50 hours when it should take them 20 minutes. Like
Mm-hmm.
if they have those two things going on and anxiety as a third whammy
Mm.
and the trauma of this, boom.
Overwhelming.
So look, hey, things are not going to look how we want them to look. It's okay. Then I would say with the anxiety, it goes back again to the relationship, co-regulation, attunement, polyvagal theory, which I have not mentioned, polyvagal theory and the polyvagal ladder, which goes hand in hand with sort of the amygdala stuff I was talking about. Brilliant theory. And it may not be the end all be all, but it gives you insight into you and your child. Anxiety, again, is the body feels threatened and safe. I was in a coma in 2000 with ARDS, which is what people are dying of now. So this scares the heck out of me. I was in a coma for 9 days, living on an Indian reservation. I didn't know I was in a coma. I come out of it. I'm very lucky to be alive. They said that
Wow.
80% of people who are intubated die. I'm very lucky to be alive, blah, blah, blah. So
We
I
are all
feel
lucky you're alive,
I
Seth.
am.
We are
After
all
that
lucky.
happened, I had 3 years of panic attack disorder and of anxiety disorder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I won't go into that now, but there is a story on that on my website that I recently did. So that's when I learned all this stuff about what was going on. But the same thing I see with kids with anxiety, like
Mm-hmm.
their nervous system. So my nervous system freaked out when I felt like I couldn't get breath because I was suffocating on my lungs during that time. So it made sense. And I hardwired it. And every time I get out of breath, I'd freak out. So, and I had a pretty much anxiety daily for about 3 years. So I get it, and I do not have it today. How did I change that? I did not use medication. I'm not saying medication is wrong by any means, but for me, I wanted to see if I could do without. I had a therapist who taught me how to meditate, what was called Vipassana, but whatever. There's so many types of somatic things that can help you. You don't need to learn all that. What you want to go down the rabbit hole of, in my opinion, if your child has anxiety, is learning about the nervous system, somatic experiences, and you can learn about them, and your own deep inner work, and learning what creates anxiety for you and what's going on in your body, and learning how to co-regulate and attune so that you can help them learn to have tools. And as Sharon said at the very beginning of the conversation, how to have vocabulary around the things that the uncomfortable things that they're experiencing. So eventually you want your child to be able to say, wow, I feel tightness in my chest. I'm feeling some of that anxiety again, mom and dad. If you have the relationship where you have the secure relationship and they're going to come to you, hey, mom and dad, I'm feeling this tightness in my chest again. I did some breathing, but it's not working yet. And, just to have dialogue around it, to have a toolbox around it, rather than what we often do, which is in this country and many places, we are a slave to our narrative and to our emotions. We have a thought. Oh, it must be true. Oh, the whole world's falling apart. We have an emotion. Oh, I feel uncomfortable. Avoid, distract,
Right.
And we are taught, don't feel. It's too scary. You can avoid it. Let it go. Don't cry. And we need to learn ways to process. So if your child struggles with anxiety, it can change, but they need to learn. They
Well,
need to learn
right.
skills,
And
as you
one of
said,
the things
skills.
kids need to learn is how to talk back to their anxiety, to actually understand that it's okay to feel anxious. I'm feeling anxious.
That's concrete.
Okay, I'm going to turn my attention to something else. Somebody wrote about a daughter who has OCD, which has amplified during this time. It's not surprising to me that kids are showing signs who have OCD or who have anxiety, maybe showing signs of increased anxiety or OCD. They feel very out of control. And so rituals or particular
And the
behaviors or particular rigidity around routines or schedule help them feel grounded and centered, and also a sense of control and predictability. This is why some kinds of routines are really helpful for all kids right now, because it allows them to understand that this is something that I can expect when there's so much right now that is unexpected. I
Can
want to
I
say,
touch?
yes,
Can
please.
I
And
touch
then
on that educational thing, or you want me to wait a minute?
one more second. So the other thing I wanted to say is that someone mentioned something about failure. And so here's what we're going to wrap up in a couple minutes, but by 9:15, what I want to say about failure is it's hard to determine what is okay right now. Many kids are depressed. They miss their friends. They
I
miss
am.
they miss their
Yeah.
sports, their lives. We all are feeling a kind of cultural dysphoria. And so when we say failure, I think we have to sort of take that with a grain of salt. Do we want our kids to fail 8th grade? No. Do we want them to be able to do work that may not be their best quality work, but they'll pass? Yes. Right? Because right now we need to get through. That's what we're focusing on. Instead of worrying that your kid may not have all the skills they need for 9th grade next year, I have something I need to tell you. No one is going to have the skills they need for 9th grade next year, because everybody has been dealing with this remote learning and the compromises that have gone along with that. So let's take a deep breath. Let kids try to exert their authority in ways that make sense. So, perhaps you don't want your child to fail 8th grade. I'm with you on that. But where can they actually be responsible and have a say in what they're going to do, so that they can try, maybe not succeed in the way that they would like, but be willing to try again? That's how we learn. That's what resilience is. Seth, go ahead. Yes. You were
Okay.
going to say something about school.
Yeah, about the educational thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's my question, because as a coach, um, I do not hold conventional beliefs, and I was a teacher for 12 years with a master's in gifted education and yada yada. I don't believe in testing, generally speaking. I don't believe in letter grades. I think they're morally wrong, yada yada. So as I watch my students going through this right now, my question is, if they're doing busy work and they're not getting anything out of it, like I'm looking at the stuff that they're doing and I'm like, wow, this is really just not, they're doing stuff, but
Mhm.
it's not putting pennies in the piggy bank for their future. It's not true education. It's doing activities or worksheets or whatever. As I'm looking at them and I question, what do kids need? I'll give you a little bit of what I, as who geeked out on this stuff for many, many years, think. One, you should look up the unschooling movement and see how unschooling families use more experiential education to allow their kids to have educational experiences. So it doesn't have to be a test or a paper or a textbook. Educational experiences can be, I was talking to a family today. They said that they completely ripped out and then rebuilt a flower bed, and their kid was totally into it. And they're planting a little garden in there. So, I mean, there's math in there, there's science in there. There could be history, there could be writing, art, there could be so many things combined with that. Second thing I want to say related to that is look up interdisciplinary lessons and the idea is that we do school where we have math, science, social studies, reading and writing. That is completely crazy that we separate these things out as if they're these own specific. That's not how life works. Okay. So we do things together, but that's not how we've structured schools. So you want your kid to have interdisciplinary things. The next thing I want to say is less is more. Your kid doesn't have to go to 7 classes
Mm,
a day.
yeah.
Your kid could do one
All right.
awesome thing a day and get 10 times more out of it than going to
Mhm.
7 classes a day and trying to cram a bunch of stuff in their brain. It doesn't work. The story is wrong. And I'm glad that this stuff is being brought to the surface right now. Next, simply reading books, finding the love of reading again. Not only is that phenomenal for the nervous system and self regulation,
Mhm.
it also is phenomenal for attention and concentration and focus, which a lot of these kids really struggle with and have lost and need to build skills. It's not just how does my kid focus? How does your kid build the muscle of focus over a long period of time, getting back to reading? And then finally, so I said unschooling and interdisciplinary. Um, the other thing is that I want them to just have, again, those experiences that are education. I don't want them sitting at the computer all day long gaming. My students, I because that is not investing in their life. Maybe they do it some fine, but I want them doing things that are going to invest because this time is precious. I'm not freaked out about it, but it
What
is
about
precious. I
kids who
want
don't like to read, though? There are
then
plenty of
your
kids.
job and my job and our job is to help inspire the love of reading, not to teach reading skills.
How do
If
you
the,
do that? How do you inspire?
oh God,
I
I
mean,
could go on for so
we
long.
don't have time for that, but I know there's certainly
But you
graphic,
got to
but
focus on the right thing, and the right
right.
thing, if they hate reading, is to teach them to help them find value and a love for reading.
And don't dismiss graphic
I
novels.
can tell
You
you how
know,
you don't inspire
right.
a love
But
for reading, which is jamming it down their throat
right,
with something that's not.
but don't negate magazines
Oh
or
yeah,
something they read online or graphic novels.
reading
There are
is
all
reading.
different kinds of reading. So we're going to stop because it's 9:15 and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And I
Oh,
just
thank
want to go
you,
over
Christy. Thank
um,
you.
some of the themes we talked about. So we talked about staying connected, identifying your feelings first, learning how to foster attunement and compassion, and empowering yourself with the tools to deal with what's coming at you. Also, self-care. Parents, it's okay to be exhausted right now. It's exhausting. Homeschooling, working, grocery shopping, something that used to be pleasurable and kind of interesting or fun is now a chore and it takes a lot of time. Be kind to yourself. That's what I'm trying to say. And give yourself some time each day in the family where everybody has some alone time to disconnect. And it's okay if that's also on screen, but have time where you actually get to chill out from each other. Manage yourselves first as adults and help your kids identify the bodily patterns and signs when their nervous systems are being activated. And finally, plan for work and play periods. Inject some fun into your lives as much as you can. I want to thank Seth Perler. And Seth, remember, please go to his website, sethperler.com, and also check out his YouTube channel. He has so many resources. Thank you so much for joining me in a conversation today. And
Thanks. It was
please,
fun. You and I have this similar way of
yeah, it was
vibing.
great. And please follow me on Facebook or Twitter or at Dr. Sharon Saline, and check out my website, drsharonsaline.com. Be safe, be healthy, have a wonderful evening. And again, thank you so much, Seth, for your many pearls of wisdom.
You're welcome. Can I
Bring
say
this
my
together.
final thought?
Yes, I was going to say, is there something you would like to
Yes.
add?
The relationship is the most important thing. That's it.
Amen. I
Focus on
couldn't agree
that.
more. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Bye, everybody. Have a
Bye.
good night.